and welcome back. This is Garima and you are listening to the Garima Avtar Show. In this podcast, I talk to various sports personalities, coaches and experts who are trailblazers in their fields to get answers about the psychology in sports, the importance of mental health and how it affects performance on the field and generally in life. Well, in today's episode, I have with me Karun Chandhok, one of the only two Formula One drivers from India. Karun was a test driver for the Red Bull Racing Formula One team in 2007 and 2008. And then he went on to race in Formula One for Hispania Racing and Team Lotus in 2010 and 11. Since he began competing in sports cars in 2012, Karun has also become the first Indian to ever compete in the iconic Le Mans 24-hour race. Karun has been a regular driver and consultant for the Williams Formula One team's heritage business since 2016 and has competed at the Goodwood Revival multiple times. He has also added the Whitsun Trophy in the CanAM Mclaren in 2019 to his accolades. Karun has built his reputation as a commentator and an analyst for Formula One broadcast in the UK since 2016 and is currently a part of the Sky Sports Formula One team that gets broadcasted to 62 countries across the world. Karun has done a special documentary called Speed with Guy Martin and is regular on Fifth Gear on Discovery Quest, and has also made an appearance on Jeremy Clarkson's film Powered Up. Karun's accomplishments and work doesn't end here. He works at a circuit design company, Driven International, and he looks into new circuit designs, upgrade of current circuits, and the creation of manufacturer driving centers around the world. Karun became a member of the first ever FIA Drivers Commission in 2013 and continues to represent the rights and views of drivers from across the world. Thanks for joining me, Karun. Great to have you on my show.
Nice to be here.
Okay, let me come straight to the questions. How does one become a Formula One driver?
Wow, you're starting with the big question straight away. Listen, there's no shortcut to it, and there's no easy answer to it. And most importantly, every driver's journey to Formula One, whoever has made it, is completely different. There's no real copy paste in that, right? So I think especially when you come from a country like India, where when I grew up, we didn't have any go-karting, we didn't have any kart championships. We have them now, but at that time we didn't. Your path up the ladder is much more complicated. When Narain started or when I started, the awareness of Formula One and motorsport was at a very low level. So, we really had to go out there and work quite hard to raise the awareness of the sport and also to go raise the funding for us. But ultimately, you have to, you have to deliver on track in terms of the junior Formula racing and, wherever you start in Formula 4 now, I guess they would start at, but Formula 3, Formula 2, and then it's a question of being in the right place at the right time to get an opportunity in F1. And it's very tricky because every year there's only maybe 2 or 3 seats that open up. And for those 2 or 3 seats, there are probably 100 drivers all banging on the door trying to get in. So it's a big challenge, but it's something, I'm very proud to have achieved.
That's fantastic. We are all very, very proud of you. And it's so amazing that you've put India on the map of Formula One. And, that's so incredible. So what have been your learnings from the racing track?
I think most importantly, you have to realize that you have to stay level-headed. You have to stay grounded. You have to keep your feet on the ground. Just because you've had a little bit of success or you've won one race or you've had one good deal somewhere, it doesn't mean the rest of it's going to fall into place automatically. I think, it's very easy to get sucked into this world of thinking that, things are going to happen in a relatively straightforward way, because it's not. It's a very complex, complicated sport. There's nothing in the world that combines sport, technology, engineering, marketing, legal, commercial, financial aspects, and therefore, I think the biggest learning is to make sure that you are knowledgeable across the entire spectrum of the sport, and then make sure that you can try and maximize every opportunity you've got.
Fantastic. I think, very rightly said. So, what do you think is your most important strength, that helps you become a better racing driver, and a better person in life?
I think I'm extremely self-critical. I'm whenever things go wrong, the first thing I do is, instead of blaming the team or blaming the car or blaming the weather or other people or other things, I look to myself. What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? I'm very, very self-critical. I'm very hard on myself, and sometimes that means I'm hard on the people around me. I don't tolerate inefficiency, and I think that's very important. You have to be honest with yourself. If you have not done a good job, if you have not delivered on your potential, if you've not really taken the opportunity, then ultimately you have to take responsibility for it. And it takes a lot of self-confidence to do that. You have to, you see a lot of people who, and I see young kids, from all over the world now, who are racing, and, they have a bad race, and the first thing they do is they blame the tires, they blame the brakes, they blame this and the other. There's no such thing as bad luck. There's bad preparation and good luck. Unquestionably, you need a bit of good luck. And I had certain seasons in my career where, you go through all the scenarios, you look at yourself, you look at the team, you look at all these other things, and sometimes you just go, okay, we didn't have any good luck today. And that does happen in sport, and that does happen in a sport like ours, where you're reliant on technology and a machine, right? It's not like cricket or football, where every bat is the same and every ball is the same. Yeah, I think if you ask me about strength, I'd say the ability to be honest and self-critical, and also be my biggest motivator, because of that.
Fantastic. I mean, that's very inspiring. I mean, definitely to be honest with oneself is so important, and feeling responsible for your own self, for your own actions, and not putting it on somebody else, and have self belief and that faith in one's own talent and skills and oneself. I think it's so important. So, looking inside the mind of a winner, so what factors do you think are linked to success in any sport? Like, just not just racing. I mean, what makes a winner?
Ambition, unquestionably. You have to have a clear goal. You have to have a clear ambition of what you want in life, and then that you have to be able to motivate yourself to achieve that. If you have to decide what your number one ambition is. For me, my ambition was to race in Formula One, and because I wanted to drive the race cars and work with the engineers. I love the engineering side of sport. I love spending time with some of the smartest engineering minds on the planet, which we have in Formula One, and problem solving and working with the team. I love being a part of a team. And that carries on now, in my television career or my business career, where I'm working with a team of people. I enjoy, being able to be a part of a team of people who are working in a cohesive way in a single direction. And everyone's got different ideas and different ways of doing things, but you have to be able to pull all of that together. And I think that's so for me, it was never about the showbiz. It was never about the razzmatazz. I never cared about the after parties. I never cared about the having my name in newspapers. None of that mattered to me. For me, my motivation came from driving the race cars and wanting to drive the race cars and do a good job of it. So that's what forced me to get out of the house and go training, and make all the sacrifices you have to make in any professional sport. It's not just motor racing. It's any professional athlete. You have to lead a very sort of binary life of you're either working or you're asleep, basically.
Yeah. Very disciplined as well.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, exactly. So but that the motivation came from wanting to compete and and drive and to do a good job in doing it.
Fantastic. Very, very inspiring, Karun. Definitely, one needs to have the complete focus, and that discipline is so, so important. So what kind of, I mean, have you done any courses, any programs you've joined specifically to upskill yourself in motorsports, or things around that?
I think it's a bit of a tricky one, Garima, because motorsport is so specialized. It's a very, very unique sport. As I mentioned before, it's the only one that combines so many different elements of life into a single activity. And therefore, I think it's, people talk about having mind coaches and talked about all these different courses and aspects that you can do, but nothing encompasses the entirety of motorsport. So I call it. I say to people, I went to SHK, which is the School of Hard Knocks, and you get beaten up along the way. You get a lot of setbacks. You get a lot of disappointment. You have a lot of bad days. You get a lot of people who let you down and lie to you and don't fulfill promises and break contracts and things like that. But you learn. You learn from these experiences. I think one of the things that I did, rather than, let's say, going to any specific courses, I made sure, and I still make sure, I try and spend a lot of time with people who've got experience in the sport, and that includes people from teams, people, other drivers, people from the administrative side, people from the media side, and because we're very fortunate in our sport to have such a rich history. Formula One specifically now has been around for, this is the 72nd year of the World Championship, but motor racing in general has been around for nearly 100 years or over 100 years in some cases. So there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from the past. There's a lot of things you can learn from the women and men who have achieved success in the sport in the past, and you have to have the humility to go out there and ask them for advice and ask them for help. And it annoys me sometimes because I see young drivers who come from India and they're racing in Europe, and I always give them my phone number and I say, listen, if you need a hand, you need any advice, give me a call. And it's funny how few of them actually take up that option. I think everyone seems to think that
Is their loss.
That's not true. No. I mean, I don't really care. At the end of the day, it's their life and it's their opportunity. But and I'm not saying that I have the answers to everything in life. But I think if you were a young kid coming from India, you would want to speak to Naren or myself, because we have gone on this path and we've gone on this journey, and we've seen the hurdles and we've seen the pitfalls, and we know the industry and we know the people. And it's interesting how few people seem to think that they need that level of help.
No, I think we all need mentors, and we all need, experienced people to, guide us all the time. And it's so important to constantly, learn from our, people who have mastered in any field that we are, getting into. I think it's, anyway, so what's the first thing that you do in the morning on a race day? I mean, so many athletes, they have some fixed rituals that they do before the start of the game. So it's basically to get the mind ready to get in the zone. So do you also, did you have any fixed rituals that you used to follow before the start of any of the race?
I just try and try to spend a little time with distractions. On a race weekend, to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of having friends and family and distractions there. My dad used to travel a lot with me to all the races, but he was very much part of my routine. He knew to just leave me alone. We would sit in silence because he knew I had my mind on the event coming up. So that was fine. But I just try and you just try and stay focused. I found it useful to talk to the engineers that I was working with, and to just soak up as much information and talk about the strategy and talk about the car and what our plan was for the race and to really think about that sort of stuff. And then you have your sort of usual routine. I think every sports person has a usual routine of a warm up and a drink and what you need to eat and all the rest of it. Make sure you're hydrated and you've got the energy you need. And yeah, I think it's not about the one day, in racing. It's about the race weekend. And I think certainly from the moment you arrive on Friday morning till Sunday night, I always thought it was very important to just stay in the zone and to cut out all of these outside things. It's not always easy because you have media commitments. You have to do interviews, you have to you have to talk to sponsors, you have to go to marketing events, all these sort of things. But so it's sometimes a little bit difficult to stay in that zone. But you have to mentally compartmentalize. You have to draw these boxes in your own head where you obviously have to go to a sponsor's event and give a speech and do what you have to do. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you're still thinking about the actual driving and the competition for the next day. So yeah, I think creating mental boxes and compartmentalizing is quite important.
Definitely. And what do you think, like, if one is playing for a team or a sponsor, I'm sure there's so much of, pressure that one has to, tackle, and then there's so much of pressure to win and, the expectations of the sponsors. And also what advice do you have for, the athletes and youngsters out there? How should they tackle the pressure?
It's not easy. Honestly, there is no easy answer for that, because it's the toughest part of the sport. I think it's a very expensive sport, and really unless you get the backing of the sponsors, the manufacturers, or the teams, there's it can turn off. Your driving career can just turn off at any point. So. And so coping with that pressure, the financial pressure, is the biggest challenge, undoubt about it. So I think it's just about, again, trying to put that aside.
Right.
But that's not easy. That's not easy, because when you get in the car, that's always weighing on your mind.
So some breathing exercises or something, also,
Yeah, but what you're talking about.
That pressure. I mean, some mental exercises or something, or.
Sure. Listen, I think everyone needs to find their own way of doing things. Whether it's you need to sit for 20 minutes and meditate in the mornings, or you need to, or you need to have a sports psychologist, or you need to find some different way to cope. But I would never pretend to have the answer for this one, because that is it's a very
personal thing as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a very personal thing, but also it's a there is no clear answer, because the pressure to succeed is always extremely high.
Yes, that anxiety management, it's a, definitely you require help of a psychologist, and it's also very personal. I mean, everyone has one's own way of dealing with that kind of pressure. So, I mean, yeah, you spoke about the importance of, the sponsors, because it is an expensive sport, motorsport, and you require financial assistance and backing. So how does one get sponsors? I mean, do you think, any marketing tips, anything you think that one should, to the aspiring athletes out there who could benefit from it?
It's very tough. And I think, it's about trying to create some sort of USP for yourself. I think in my case, it was a question of trying to be an Indian driver in Formula One, which, even today as we sit, there's only 2 out of 1.2 billion. So again, it's quite a unique story. I think, when I went to Le Mans again, to be the first Indian in Le Mans is a marketable story. So it's about finding a USP, I think, for yourself. What can you bring to the table? But I think also it's about looking today. The world has changed in the last 10 years in sports activation and sports sponsorship. It's no longer about here's a check and we're going to put a sticker on the car and
Yeah.
and your helmet, and away you go. Now it's about creating B2B deals. It's about creating extra value for any investment that people make. And I think it's about working on all of those angles to try and leverage any form of financial investment into the program.
Totally, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, there are huge expectations and deliverables attached to everything. It's always give and take. So tell me, Karun, I'm sure for Formula One, it requires very, the fitness routine has to be, I'm sure, very tough and very demanding. And so were there also any mental training exercises that have been part of your fitness training routine that you can share with the audience that may help the audience?
No, I mean, listen, I think especially on the, during the race weekends or the build up to race weekends, my mother was very influential in trying to teach me to meditate and focus, and just sort of, sit in your hotel room, or if I was staying at home, then at home for, 20 or 25 minutes, just to try and focus your mind, and to calm your mind, and to stay, to just, switch off. Because nowadays we all live in this world where we're permanently on our phones, or there's TV, or there's radio, there's just noise. We live in this world of noise now, which they didn't have 25 years ago. And we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of being caught up in the social media world, and we're constantly looking at our WhatsApps and all this sort of nonsense. And so I think it's, being able to spend a certain amount of time to switch off from all of that was very useful for me. And as I said, I think my mum was a big influence in that respect, of trying to just get me used to being able to just spend 20 minutes focusing and just try and really, meditate and get your brain in the right space and your mind in the right space.
Fantastic. So, I mean, mental health is such an important, subject these days. And have you ever faced any mental health challenges that, in your journey? And I mean, how did you overcome it? If you faced...
Yeah, I think first of all, using the term mental health challenges is too generalized. I think the reality is everyone's got their own levels of challenges and stress, and things that create a level of stress in their minds in a different way. And I think you can't quite generalize it. But certainly for me, the financial pressure was the biggest one. I went through long periods of not being able to sleep at night, and then you haven't got an appetite to be able to eat properly, but you still have to go and train. You have, and being on the road, you imagine I came to England when I was 18 years old from Madras. I went from a city of 11 million people to a town of 11,000 people in the middle of nowhere in the winter. And, that's a pretty daunting prospect as an 18-year-old. I couldn't cook. I'd never lived on my own before. So, I think certainly there were some pretty dark days, especially when you consider the financial burden of it all as well, So, but I think once you get older and you mature, certainly these days, I've become, I would say, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, I've become much better, and that comes with age and maturity, right? I become much better recognizing, okay, I mentally, I'm getting fried right now. I'm mentally overloaded. I mentally don't have capacity to think anymore. I need to get myself sorted out. And for me, I find, just small things. Make a list of all the tasks that you have to deal with, so you're not overwhelmed, because otherwise you're just thinking of all these things coming at you. Make a list of all the tasks, and then set aside, 3 hours, no distractions. I sit in my office, computer on, smash through all of that. And then I get on my bicycle and I go cycling for 2 or 3 hours, because I find that very therapeutic, being able to I found cycling for me, it was a great form of physical fitness, but actually it was also a huge form of mental fitness.
Okay.
Because it meant 2-3 hours, but I was not looking at my phone. I was not on emails. I wasn't talking to people. And I would go cycling on my own quite often because I found it mentally very therapeutic. I would just, process my thoughts, get my, because I would have all these things going on in my head, and just having those 2-3 hours of space would be good for me to to really align my thoughts and prioritize and think about the way I wanted to tackle things and give me clarity of thought. As I say, every person is different.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to find their own way of coping and dealing with things. Some people like going to a spa day. Some people like going and talking to their friends. They find it useful, to go and have lunch with friends or their siblings or their family and just talk it all out and whatever. Whereas, so each their own.
So, what's the one piece of advice that somebody has ever given to you, which you think, has been the best advice ever?
Assumption is the mother of all screw ups. Never assume. I think that's a phrase that comes back a lot in this business.
Oh yeah. In fact, assume is ASSUME. So it's making an ass of you and me when you do that. Yes.
Yeah, and I think there's so many times you think, oh, I just assume this and this and this will happen, and it doesn't. The point is you have to take things to the end to finish it. You can't. You just cannot take anything for granted in life.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. What do you do to keep yourself motivated?
I think ultimately it's about having goals, and every little while, you stop and try and spend a little bit of time just thinking about what you want out of life. Now I'm in a different phase of life. The driving career is sort of winding down. I still do a few bits and pieces, but I've got a media career that's very busy, and a business career. Doing lots of projects and consulting work, and working with the governing body of the FIA, and here in the UK with Motorsport UK and things like that. So there's lots of different things, and ultimately, I think it's about, I like to make sure that things are interesting. I think if I was stuck doing the same thing day in day out, I'd be bored. So at the moment, I've got 5 or 6 or 7 different jobs that I'm doing, and they're all interesting, and that's what keeps me motivated. And I ultimately I love Formula One, and I love motor racing. I love it today as much as I did when I was a kid watching it growing up. So that in itself is a huge motivator to make sure that I am educating myself, I'm staying current, I'm learning all the time, I'm doing the best job I can possibly as a broadcaster, or as a writer, or a columnist, or as a business consultant, because if you don't do a good job, then you won't get hired. So that's the motivation to stay involved in the sport. And I a lot of people like being a big fish in a small pond. And a lot of people have asked me, why don't I go back to India and do things for Indian motorsport and work with the federation there and do this and the other. But the reality is, the level of politics and the level of, it's just quite a messy situation at the moment there, and it has been for some time. I don't find that enjoyable. I much rather being a small fish, but in the biggest pond on the planet. And the fact that I get to go to, so many of the, not just F1 races, but the world's leading motorsport events, and work with the top people in the business and engage with them on a weekly basis, and spend time with them and learn from them and grow with them and work with them. I find that extremely rewarding. So yeah, I think that's the motivation.
Fantastic. I mean, and you have a growth mindset. I'm like that. It's so important to constantly, do new things, cultivate new skills, and you're constantly, getting yourself motivated. That's fabulous. So, if you could meet your younger self who is striving to be where you are today, what is that one piece of advice that you would like to give to him?
I think the advice would be to have more self-belief. I think as a you know as a young driver coming up, I never had enough self-belief in myself. I always questioned my ability. Point A. I think point B, I think I was too trusting of people. There were too many occasions where I trusted people at face value and took what they were saying to be, what they were saying verbally to be guaranteed that it's what they would deliver when it came to, um, contractual time or things like that. So I don't think I took enough control and ownership of certain decisions because I just blindly trusted that people would deliver. But that's what happens when you're young and naive and people tell you they're going to help you fulfill certain dreams. You see the stars and you just blindly believe it's going to be great and all this is going to happen. But the reality is quite different. So I think, I think that's probably two bits.
So, who's your inspiration or role model, and why? What values like you have imbibed from him or her?
Um, I think there are so many role models around in different walks of life. I look at people like Serena Williams. What she's achieved, given the background they came from, is absolutely staggering. It's amazing what she's achieved as a sporting career. I look at someone like Rafa Nadal, who, the tenacity to stay at the top for so long is incredible. Same with Sachin, for so many years at the top of his game, and did it with humility and with class. And I think, hugely inspirational. But I guess ultimately from a racing standpoint, my childhood heroes were Alain Prost and Mario Andretti. And in more recent times, as I've learned more and more about him, is Jim Clark, the Scottish world champion from the 60s. And, these were drivers who were just, A, they were tremendously gifted, but B, they were very versatile. They were, they understood the bigger picture of the sport and the business and how important it was to be in the right team at the right time and surround yourself with the right people and, and just achieve great things. So, yeah, I think that's sort of it.
Fantastic. I'm also greatly inspired by some of the heroes, and it's you get to learn so much from their life and their journey. Okay, so one last question, Karun. So, what's your message to our audience?
I would want to transfer to my kids, basically, which is, whatever you're doing in life, it doesn't matter. You're going to be a doctor, lawyer, sports person, whatever your career is going to be. I think it's about having clarity of thought and to have clear goals, clear ambitions. I think what is the hardest thing in life is you see people who have gone through their teen years, don't really have any clear thoughts about what they want to be in life, what they want to do in life as a career, and they start wallowing. Then they do an undergrad degree in something, but they don't really think they want to pursue that career. So then they spend their 20s still going in and out of different things, and before you know it, time passes. Time doesn't wait for anybody. So I think having clarity of thought of, I'm not saying it has to be completely narrowed down that I want to be a cricket player, but it can be, if that's the case, that's great. But it can be, I want to work in the cricket industry, or I want to work in a particular sector, and then within that you can find different avenues. But I think, it's really important for people, especially at the younger generation. I have no messages for the older generation. They who am I to advise anything? But I think for younger kids, that's one thing I'd say, is have clear goals and ambitions and understanding of how you could achieve those.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karun. I would like to now go to the rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I guess so.
Okay, cool. Okay, so here we start. What song pumps you up for a big race?
I actually don't listen to any music because I just find it distracting before a big race.
Oh,
So I'm
really?
not one of these drivers walking
Okay.
around with the headphones on. No,
Okay.
I prefer to drive. I even turn the radio off in the car when I'm driving to the track. I prefer the silence.
Okay. That's fine. That's cool. Okay, any personal motto?
As I said, I think assumption is the mother of all screw ups. Never assume.
Your favorite racer?
Uh, Alain Prost, Jim Clark, Mario Andretti.
Your favorite athlete other than racing?
Probably Rafa Nadal.
Documentary film that inspired you the most?
That's a good question. I've seen so many documentaries recently. I enjoyed that Michael Jordan one, The Last Dance, the basketball film.
That was amazing. That
It was
was
a series, yeah.
wonderful. Yes, that is. One superpower you wish you had?
Uh, being able to make the sunshine all the time.
Wonderful. Your go-to workout?
Cycling,
Your favorite comfort food?
South Indian breakfast.
The highest speed that you've driven?
363
Mm,
kilometers an hour.
wow. Any hobbies?
I enjoy cycling. I enjoy reading about political history, and um, I basically my hobbies now all revolve around my kids.
Okay, the best thing about racing?
Driving the cars.
Your favorite book?
Um, I would say from as a racing um, book. Well, actually, there's a few. I need to look at my shelf behind me because they're all here.
Wow.
They're all here
That's
on the
there are quite a few
on the
of
shelf.
them.
Yeah. God, you probably called. I think there's one called Chasing the Title, which I think actually for anyone who's new to the sport and wants to learn a little bit about motor racing and why Formula One is special, I think it's a really good book.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So, favorite racing circuit?
Suzuka in Japan and Le Mans.
Your favorite supercar?
The Ferrari F40.
One hidden talent?
I'm a pretty good cook. I was
Best,
a useless cook when I came to England, but now I'm a pretty good cook.
fantastic. Best race memory?
First Formula One race, being on the grid with people like Michael Schumacher and Lewis and Fernando and all these world champions. That was a dream come true.
Absolutely. What inspires you the most?
Seeing people achieve success through adversity. I think across anything in life.
Most embarrassing moment?
Crashing in Melbourne in 2011 when I was driving for Lotus.
Oh,
It was really bad.
thank you so much, Karun. And with this, we come to the end of this discussion. Thank you for joining me in this absolutely fantastic session. And thank you all for listening to today's episode with your host, Garima Avtar. If you like this episode, then subscribe to my podcast for more new episodes and a deeper dive into the world of motivation and sports psychology. See you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.